I'm sharing 26 kayak fishing mistakes I made, so hopefully you can avoid them and spend more time catching fish and less time learning things the expensive way. Number 1, when I first got into kayak fishing, I thought I needed everything. The reality is that most of that stuff sat in my garage. So start simple, let your fishing tell you what gear you actually need. One of the biggest mistakes new anglers make is trying to buy experience, right? You can't. The best investment early on is going to be time on the water. Start with a couple of things you know that you're going to need, then after every trip, do a post-mortem and slowly add. This way you will have a dialed in setup in just a handful of trips. Number 2, this is one of the simplest safety habits you can develop, and it takes less than a minute. Before I launch, someone knows where I'm fishing, where I'm launching from, and roughly when I expect to be home. And today, it's easier than ever. Most smartphones allow you to share your location with family or friends in just a few taps. I'm not expecting something bad to happen, but if it does, having someone know where to start looking can make all the difference. Number 3, one mistake I made early on was checking the weather the night before and assuming I was good to go. Don't trust yesterday's forecast. Conditions can change fast. Now I check the weather multiple times before launching, including right before I leave the house. A forecast that says 5-mile-per-hour winds can quickly become 15 by the time you're on the water. All right, number 4, the first time you fall out should not be the first time you're getting back in your kayak. A lot of kayak anglers assume getting back into their kayaks is going to be easy. And then they try it for the first time and realize it's a little harder than it looks, especially if you're tired or cold or wearing a lot of bulky clothing. And this is something you should actually do, right? Not just watch a YouTube video about it. Every kayak is different. Every kayak reacts differently during re-entry. So spend a few minutes in shallow water on a warm day, practicing with your specific kayak. Learn what works, what doesn't, and how your kayak behaves. It's one of those skills you hope you never need, but if you do, you'll be glad that you practiced beforehand. Number 5, you don't need your entire tackle collection on your kayak. Too many options often lead to decision paralysis. Some of my best fishing days happened with just a handful of confidence baits. It also keeps you from becoming a more intentional angler, right? If you bring 100 lures, there's a good chance you're not doing much critical thinking before the trip because you can always figure it out once you get out in the water. Instead, try building a plan around 4 or 5 baits and ask yourself why each one of these made the cut. Maybe one is for shallow water, one is for offshore fish, one is for reaction bites, and one is for finesse situation. Now you're fishing with a strategy instead of fishing with a tackle store. Number 6, so when you're first starting out, more rods often just mean more problems. More things to manage, more things to organize, and more things to get tangled. And if you happen to take a spill, all those rods can quickly become expensive cover at the bottom of the lake if they're not secured properly. So keep it simple, bring a few versatile setups, learn what each one does, and focus on fishing instead of managing equipment. All right, number 7, most days your biggest challenge isn't finding fish, right? It's controlling your kayak in the wind and current and boat wakes. Those things can constantly pull you away from where you want to be. You can have the right lure at the right location, but if you're drifting too fast or blowing off your target, you're not presenting that bait effectively. So learning how to use your paddle, using an anchor, a stakeout pole will help you catch more fish than most people realize. Number 8, fishing too far from the launch. Early on, I would paddle miles chasing fish, right? The problem is I still had to paddle back, and somehow the trip back always felt twice as long as the trip out, right? A lot of beginners underestimate how much energy paddling actually takes, especially after a full day of fishing. Then you add wind, you add heat, exhaustion, changing weather, and that long paddle back can become downright miserable. Now, the good news is you don't have to travel far to catch fish. Some of my best days have happened surprisingly really close to the launch. So when you're starting out, focus on learning water, building confidence, and staying within your comfort zone. The fish are usually closer than you think. Number 9, if it's not tied down, assume it's going to go swimming at some point. Early on, I watched rods and nets and tackle boxes and GoPros and other gears disappear into the lake. It doesn't take much. One bad step, one unexpected wake, a slippery fish or slippery hands, or simple carelessness, that can get really expensive really fast. A few dollars spent on leashes and tethers can save you hundreds or even thousands of dollars down the road. One product I specifically recommend is the Rogue Fishing phone tether, the Shield, right? For most of us, our phone is one of the most expensive and most important items on the kayak. It's our camera, it's our GPS, it's our weather app, it's our emergency communication device, all in one. So make sure that you're tethering your phone for sure. Mistake number 10, thinking I needed a motor immediately, right? Don't get me wrong, motors are awesome. I use them all the time, but they aren't required to catch fish. What I recommend is learning how to paddle and position your kayak and fish efficiently before worrying about the upgrades. One of the biggest mistakes I see beginners making is thinking they need a motor before they even know whether or not they enjoy kayak fishing. And the truth is, people were catching fish from kayaks long before motors became popular. In fact, learning without a motor will make you a better angler. You'll learn boat control and how wind affects your kayak, how to position yourself around cover, and how to move efficiently on the water. Now, a motor can make kayak fishing easier, but it doesn't make you a better fisherman. So master the basics first, then add upgrades as your skills and your budget grow. Mistake number 11, thinking I need electronics immediately. Now don't get me wrong, fish finders help, but electronics don't replace fishing knowledge, right? So learn that fish behavior, learn those seasonal patterns, learn the spawning cycles, learn those things first. Electronics become much more useful once you understand what you're looking at. But if you're just getting started, I'd focus on learning fish behavior first. The better angler you become, the more valuable your electronics are going to become. Mistake number 12, focusing more on fishing than safety. No fish is worth taking unnecessary risks, right? I left fish biting because conditions have changed. And that's never a decision I regretted. And one of the easiest traps to fall into is convincing yourself that just stay a little longer. Right? The fish are biting, you're on a good pattern. Maybe you just caught your biggest fish of the day. But when the weather starts changing or conditions begin pushing beyond your comfort level, it's time to start thinking about safety instead of fish. Fish are gonna be there tomorrow. Your goal isn't to catch one more bass, your goal is to make it home safely every single time. Mistake number 13, and one of the biggest mistakes beginners make, is trying to fish conditions they simply aren't ready for yet. You see someone on YouTube crossing big water, or fishing heavy wind, or handling rough conditions, but what you don't see are the years of experience that got them there, right? So start small, fish protected water, learn how your kayak handles in different conditions, learn what 10-mile-per-hour winds feels like before you decide to fish in 20. There's absolutely no shame in turning around, no shame in staying home, or simply picking a smaller body of water. Experience is earned one trip at a time. Mistake number 14. This is probably one of the dumbest mistakes I made when I first started kayak fishing. Early on, I didn't wear my PFD very often. It was on the kayak, but it wasn't on me. And the problem is the PFD doesn't help you if it's strapped to the boat. The two biggest excuses that I hear are the law doesn't require it and I'm a great swimmer. Now first, using the minimum legal requirement as your safety standard really isn't a great idea. And second, you don't need a PFD when you can swim. You need it when you can't. You need it when cold water shock takes your breath away, right? You need it when you're exhausted or you're unconscious. Accidents, they happen fast. All right, mistake number 15. One of the biggest mistakes I made early on was only bringing enough water for what I thought I needed, right? And the problem is that kayak fishing often means sitting in direct sunlight for hours with very little shade. And by the time you feel thirsty, well, you're already behind. Headache, poor decision making, lack of focus can all be signs of dehydration, and none of those things can help you catch more fish or stay safe out in the water. Number 16. This is where a lot of beginners actually get themselves in trouble, right? They launch with a nice tailwind, they effortlessly drift or paddle a mile or two away from launch, don't really think much about it, and then it's time to go home. And suddenly that easy tailwind becomes a brutal headwind. And what felt like a relaxing fishing trip turns into survival cardio, just trying to get back to the truck. So whenever possible, I like to start by working into the wind. That way the trip home becomes a lot easier. A little attention to wind direction before you launch can save you a whole lot of suffering later. Mistake number 17, skipping basic safety gear. Whistle, light, first aid kit, communication device. Hopefully you'll never need them in an emergency situation, but if you do, you're gonna be glad they're there, right? A lot of anglers spend thousands of dollars on kayaks and rods and reels and motors and electronics, but they overlook some of the cheapest and most important gear that they can carry. And the reality is that most safety gear sits unused 99% of the time. That's actually a good thing. The goal isn't to use it, the goal is to have it when something unexpected happens. And sometimes that gear, it isn't for you, right? It may be for another angler or a boater or a paddler who suddenly needs assistance. Mistake number 18, one of the biggest mistakes I made was just thinking paddling was paddling. And the reality is that a few basic paddle strokes can make kayak fishing safer, can make it easier, and a whole lot more enjoyable. You're gonna be able to cover more water, use less energy, and have far better boat control. So I highly recommend learning these basic strokes. You're gonna look at the forward stroke, right? Your primary stroke for efficient paddling. Your reverse stroke, right? This is gonna help stop the kayak and back away from obstacles. Your sweep stroke, right? Turning the kayak quickly without losing much momentum. And then you have a draw stroke, which is going to move the kayak sideways toward the dock or cover or structure. Now, the good news is you don't need to be a paddling expert overnight. Spend a little time practicing these fundamentals and you'll immediately notice better boat control and less fatigue on the water. It's one of the simplest kayak skills that you can learn that will improve every kayak trip that you take. Mistake number 19. A mistake a lot of beginners make is not paying attention to their kayak's weight capacity. Every kayak has a maximum weight rating, and that number isn't just your body weight. It includes you, your rods, your tackle, electronics, batteries, motors, coolers, safety gear, the kayak itself, right? And everything else you bring on board. And it adds up faster than you think, especially on those budget-friendly kayaks. And when you exceed a kayak's weight capacity, the kayak sits lower in the water, it becomes slower, less efficient to paddle, less stable, and it can take on water more easily and become harder to recover if something goes wrong. So even if you're not exceeding the limit, getting close to it can negatively impact the performance. Mistake number 20. One of the most important safety lessons I've learned is to assume no one can see you. Not because boaters are reckless. In fact, most boaters are doing their best to be safe. The problem is that kayaks sit incredibly low to the water. And you add waves and boat wakes and glare from the sun and rough water, distance or a busy horizon, and even the most experienced boat operators can lose sight of a kayak. That's why on lakes with power boats, you won't find me without my Guardian Angel flag and light kit. I want every advantage possible when it comes to being seen. I don't assume anybody can see me, right? I fish defensively. I stay aware of boat traffic and do everything I can to increase my visibility. The safest mindset you can have is simple. Assume no one can see you and fish accordingly. Mistake number 21. If you're fishing before sunrise or after sunset, visibility matters. One of the last situations you ever want to find yourself in is sitting in a kayak while a boat comes around a point or across open water at full speed and doesn't see you until the last second because you're not visible. Remember, you're sitting just inches above the water, and at night it makes you incredibly difficult to spot without the proper lighting. That's why I always make sure I'm visible when fishing in low light conditions. Good lights aren't just about following regulations, they're about giving other boaters every opportunity to see you and avoid you. Mistake number 22. One mistake that gets a lot of anglers in trouble is dressing for the air temperature instead of the water temperature, right? A 75 degrees day feels amazing. Shorts and a hoodie might seem like the perfect choice. But if the water temperature is still 50 degrees and you unexpectedly end up in that water, that warm day suddenly doesn't matter nearly as much. Cold water shock is real. Hypothermia is real. It can take your breath away, affect your ability to swim, and turn a simple fall into a serious emergency. So whenever you're fishing during those colder months or early spring, always ask yourself one question: what happens if I end up in the water? Mistake number 23, not carrying a whistle, right? A whistle is one of the simple safety tools you can carry. It's inexpensive, it's lightweight, and much more effective than yelling across open water. So if you're injured, exhausted, dealing with the wind, or trying to get the attention of another boater, a whistle can be heard from much further away than your voice. And for something that costs just a few dollars and weighs almost nothing, it's one of the highest value pieces of safety gear that you can own. Mistake number 24, not carrying a safety knife. If you become tangled in a rope or anchor line or braided fishing line, having immediate access to a knife can be critical. In fact, if I'm fishing a river, right, and if I know I'm going to be using the anchor and it's really windy, you will always find me with a safety knife attached directly to my PFD. Now, notice I said attached to my PFD, not buried in a hatch or sitting in a tackle bag. If something goes wrong, I want to immediately access it. So hopefully you'll never need it, but in a situation where you're tangled up and seconds matter, a safety knife can become one of the most important pieces of safety gear you can carry. Mistake number 25. One of the most important lessons I've learned through kayak fishing is a principle called KYL, K-Y-L, know your limits. And the key is to understand that your limits are unique to you. The limits of a healthy 25-year-old may be drastically different than the limits of a 55-year-old, right? The limits of an experienced paddler is completely different than someone who just spotted their first kayak weeks ago. And that's okay, right? Kill isn't about comparing yourself to other anglers. It's about honestly evaluating your skills and your fitness level and your experience and the conditions and risks involved. Now, the water doesn't care how experienced you think you are, how expensive your kayak is, or how badly you want to catch one more fish. There's absolutely no shame in turning around, heading back to launch, or deciding today's conditions aren't right for you. In fact, it's often the smartest decision you can make. Now, we've covered quite a few safety-related mistakes in this video, but the reality is that we only scratched the surface. Kayak fishing has absolutely exploded in popularity over the last several years, and the problem is that kayak fishing specific safety education hasn't kept pace with that growth. That's exactly why Chad Hoover and I created KFAST, Kayak Fishing Advanced Safety Training. KFAST is designed specifically for kayak anglers that covers topics like PFDs and weather and cold water hazards, trip planning, re-entry, shared waterways, hook removal, and a whole lot more. The goal isn't to scare people away from kayak fishing. The goal is to help people enjoy this incredible sport safely for years to come. And here's the best part. The certification is only 25 bucks. So for less than a cost of a couple urchin baits, right, you can get hours of kayak fishing safety training, a certification of completion, decals, and access to partner benefits. So if you're new to kayak fishing, or even if you've been doing it for years, I highly encourage you to check out kfast.co. And mistake number 27, I wish I would have started years ago. You don't need the perfect kayak. You don't need a motor. You don't need electronics. You don't need thousands of dollars of gear. You just need to get on the water. Because once you do, you're going to realize why so many people are absolutely obsessed with this sport. And if you're already kayak fishing, drop a comment below and tell me one mistake that you made as a beginner that you would absolutely avoid. You might help somebody else skip a lesson that took you years to learn. Now, if you're looking for a couple of lures that absolutely murder them, I got the chatterbait video right there, swim jig video right there. Thanks for watching, guys. See you out in the water.